Yeah, let's. Suppose it's 1,200 people supposed to be so close to that. Good evening, everybody. New microphones. Can you hear me all? Can you hear me all? Is that right? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? It's used. No, we're not that far west. Ewans, we're not Pittsburgh yet. It's 6 p.m. on Tuesday, October 22nd, and I would like to call tonight's budget hearing to order. Thank you for attending. It is important to recognize that we are here tonight to focus on our financial priorities with regard to finalizing the 2025 York City budget. As our budget is basically the blueprint for the City of York, it is imperative that the budget team and I receive as much information as possible in order to ensure a fiscally responsible budget is adopted. With that said, we will hear testimony on projected income and budgeted expenses for all departments as they relate to programs and services for the City of York, appropriations, how they will be used, projected expenditures, and program outcomes. In considering the budget, Council may reduce any item and may increase or add items as deemed appropriate and or necessary to achieve the city's goals and its financial objectives. I would like to emphasize that this is a public hearing, not a public meeting. Although we welcome your comments, a public hearing is not a debate session, but is designed specifically for the purpose of receiving testimony and evidence on the issues at hand. Presenters will first be given an opportunity to outline their budget, followed by the budget team, and then council questions. We will then receive public testimony. It is asked that each person providing testimony give your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone who wishes to speak has an opportunity to do so. Are rebuttal comments allowed? At my discretion, rebuttal comments may be allowed. If allowed, rebuttal comments will only address specific matters or questions raised during the hearing and must be brief, preferably, again, 3 minutes or less. Things to keep in mind. Speakers should provide testimony pertinent to the subject matter at hand and should avoid repetition of comments made by previous speakers. Refraining from comment if the same points were raised by a prior speaker or simply stating agreement with the points previously provided will help move the hearing along so that others who wish to speak will have the opportunity to do so. Large groups whose members wish to speak are encouraged to designate a spokesperson. What about written testimony? Exhibits, letters, petitions, and other documents presented or shown to the council or administration become part of the official record. Written testimony may be submitted in conjunction with or in place of oral testimony. What is not allowed? No disruptions or disorderly conduct will be tolerated. Speakers and members of the public shall refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, engaging in disruptive conversation during presentations, speaking out of turn, preventing or attempting to prevent others who have the floor from speaking, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the public hearing. Such conduct is strictly prohibited. Personal attacks on elected officials, staff, or members of the public are out of order and will not be tolerated. It is not appropriate for a speaker to debate a matter under consideration with other speakers, the audience, or members of the budget panel. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease upon request will be grounds for ending a speaker's time. With your cooperation, we will have an informative and successful hearing, and your adherence to these instructions is truly appreciated. Consideration for adoption of the 2025 budget is projected to take place before December 31st, 2024, and will be advertised accordingly. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Business Administrator, Kim Robertson.
Let me make sure my mic is on and everybody can hear me. Hello, welcome. First of all, I want to make sure that if you were here with us and you need a copy of the budget, there's about 20 of them back there on the table. If you are at home or will be checking later, there is a copy of the budget on the city's website under the subheading for Government, City Finances, Budget Documents 2025. So there's a PDF there that you can look at. All right, so there's a couple things that I asked the mayor if I could point out about this draft budget document before we get going. First of all, as you're going through the draft document, in previous years, for the sake of the ease of adding together numbers, I had represented revenue as a negative number, but this year it is represented as a positive number in its own section. All totals and subtotals for cost center fund and departments show revenue minus expenses, and anything resulting in a surplus is shown as a positive number in the totals, and deficits are negatives. We can clarify that as we go through, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that that's how we were representing our numbers this time. Another important point is that the mayor has been adamant from the beginning that he wanted to put ARPA funds, specifically those through our revenue loss portion, $10 million, as much as we could towards health insurance costs for the FY25 budget. We were able to put $5,570,459 towards health insurance costs in the FY25 budget. What that did was lower the overall expense that had to be covered and allocated out to the departments. To point that difference, last year the cost for the health insurance allocation per full-time employee was $37,110. This year, because of being able to offset the total cost that needed to be allocated with the ARPA funds, the per full-time person portion of the health insurance is $23,561. So that is a savings of $13,549 per full-time employee. So what that means is that didn't reduce our cost. The cost is still going to be represented in our risk management budget. What it did was essentially give us a funding source to cover part of that cost. And what's left over is what you'll see as the health insurance allocation that gets shared out with the departments to cover the budgeted positions within their budget. Mm-hmm.
If I may jump in for a second, I know that some of the council members were interested in a tax reduction at one point, and we found that probably wouldn't be overall a positive way to use it. But in a sense, this is what we've done here. It's a tax reduction 15 years out, because we're essentially adding this money almost to the same idea of what we're using the wastewater treatment plant sale money for. So we were able to take this one-time lump sum and put it into the general fund to pay for health care costs. Now, again, 15 years from, so we're saving money 15 years from now, if that makes sense. We're adding more money into that pot of money that is holding us over so that we will not hopefully have to raise taxes 10, 15, or even more years if we continue to be frugal with our money.
Now, this obviously will also, we'll see the impact of this next year when it looks like everybody's budget's going up since we won't have any more ARPA money to spend there. But I wanted to point that out, so you'll see that if you're going through the budgets and you're like, oh, last year health insurance was this much and now it's this much lower. That is the result of the revenue replacement ARPA funds being used to cover a portion of the health insurance cost. The next thing I wanted to mention is a change that we've been considering for several years, but did make it this time. The utility costs for the buildings that the city runs previously were all shown in the 420 Public Works budget. So they all had different cost centers associated with what building it was, police, fire, recreation, whatever it would be, but they were all within the Public Works budget under either Fund 10 or 420, or for 20 for recreation. This year we have moved all the utility costs back out into each department's budget so that we can give a more accurate representation of that department's total operating costs. So that is something that you're going to see that in tomorrow with the 420 budget for Public Works, you'll see that there's zero utility expenses, and with notes that they were moved into the department. And then you'll start seeing, not necessarily with this group until we get to police today, you'll see that they have no utility costs the previous year, but now they have utility costs this year. So that was just the move we made in order, again, to have a better representation of the total operating costs within each department with their facilities. Next, I would actually like to get us started, and if I can point everybody to page number 1 within the budget, which is titled the Request Amount by Fund page. This little 2-pager is something that we always include in the draft and the proposed and the approved budgets. So I'll try not to bore everyone and go too much into the process, but the city works off of financially several different funds that we keep our money in, and the funds are designed for different purposes. Obviously, we have our general operating fund, which is Fund 10, and then we have a separate fund for recreation is 20. Then we also have different funding sources or places where we've got funding from that we need to keep separate from the operating accounts. So you'll see there's different accounts for 25, which is our state health grants, and the community development block grants and home grants for 30 and 31. Specifically, what I wanted to show is this one's slightly different, the way I've structured this, which leads into another change we made this year, is that previously, in order to account for any fund balance that we were using to balance the fund as a whole, which essentially means it was revenue we had received in previous years that we did not spend, that we're now going to use this year. So it's not revenue coming in this year, but we wanted to show that we have it available to use, which is going to be used to balance out the expenses. That was never in the actual line items in the budget. It was always represented on this sheet. So one thing that we did this year, it is represented here, but I added an actual column for it as opposed to it just being noted in the notes at the bottom, how much fund balance was actually worked into the budget for each fund itself. The other thing is what you'll see throughout the lines of the budget is that we added revenue lines that refer to carryover fund balances, which that actually makes the budget itself balance out as you go through it, which is a bigger help. So say for the police department, we'll see that they have $3 million in ARPA expenses. Well, we don't have revenue coming in for those ARPA expenses because we'd already received the money. So if we didn't show that there was revenue to balance out that $3 million, they would just show up that they had a deficit of $3 million. Now this year, you're going to see that they break even for their Fund 29 for ARPA. So we just wanted to make it a little more clear. The one thing I wanted to make note on here is in this process of figuring out how we're representing fund balance, there is two corrections to this sheet. First of all, I ask you to look down to Fund 28 for the proceeds from the sale of an asset. The correction to this essentially is the revenue should be $8 million, which represents the investment income that we're getting in from the funds that we have invested for the proceeds from the sale of the plant. The fund balance should be $10,235,798. That is representing the principal that we're using as fund balance that we've already received to cover the expenses in the budget. Then I'd like you to go back up to the General Fund 10. General Fund 10 revenue should actually be $69,349,641, and the fund balance should be 0. Essentially what is represented here is that the fund balance that's actually coming from Fund 20 is being represented as being Fund 10, because ultimately we're transferring that fund balance out of Fund 28 into Fund 10 to help balance 10. But again, something new, we had to work out how to properly represent it, and after reviewing with the mayor, was like, wait, that's not quite right. So that will be shown differently in the proposed budget, but I wanted to make sure that I shared that with everybody.
And just to clarify for everybody out there, because this is kind of how we are running the city since the sale of the wastewater treatment plant, what we're saying here is that $18,235,798 from the not only the proceeds of the sale, but also any dividends that we received. That's the amount that we are using to balance the budget this year so that we do not have to increase taxes. So think about that. We are running an almost $18.2 million deficit. And we are doing that so that we don't have to raise people's taxes. And that was the purpose of the sale of the wastewater treatment plant. But out of that $18 million, $8 million of it was dividends that we received from our investments. And that was the whole goal, was to take that big lump sum of money invest it so that for the first time in decades, the city's actually making money instead of having to spend money on the TRAN that we used to have to get. We used to have to borrow money at the beginning of the year, and we'd have to pay to borrow that money, all that. Now the city is actually making money, and this wasn't all, was that all from 1 year, or was that a little bit left over?
No, the $8 million is what we anticipate to bring in next year as revenue.
So the $8 million with the current rates that are going, we expect to make $8 million that the taxpayers don't have to pay. So that's something good.
And again, while we're on the topic, the actual 18 that is being used is directly being used to cover the expenses associated with our debt service, our MMO payments, and part of what's left of the health insurance expenses that were not covered by ARPA. So we're still within the designated use that we had said we were going to use it for.
And just to remind folks, we had said that once we sold the wastewater treatment plant, the debts of the city would be paid off. But it doesn't always work that way. When you have bonds that are out there, you're not allowed to pay them off right away. So as they become mature, then we pay them off. So you'll see that within the finance budget either tonight or tomorrow.
All right, that was the end of my items of note that what I think will help everybody as we go through the budget.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to take a pause here just because this is such the overarching idea of how the government works. Are there any questions about what we've done here? Any changes that we've made? I know budget team, you did it, so you probably don't have any questions. Councilwoman.
Is that money that for bonds that couldn't be paid off, is that escrowed?
No, it's in the CRIM.
Okay.
So we take it out
Right.
as we need it.
Thanks.
Yeah, escrowed, it would not make as much money for us.
Exactly.
So we try to keep that money making money until we absolutely need it.
The only ones that are actually escrowed was the ones that were for the wastewater treatment
The
plant
sewer.
itself.
Oh, they did get escrowed?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
My
The
mistake.
ones that are not escrowed are the general bonds.
Right, which are the big
Yes.
the big numbers in here?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on the funds, on the fund sheets? Yes, Councilwoman. Could you please approach so we can hear? We are being recorded, I believe.
Yep.
And so in lieu of a stenographer, which we have done in the past, we have found that we can save a little extra money. And we are recording these hearings.
Super. Thank you. Thank you guys for a nice big budget and presentation. In the summary, which is very helpful, the expense column, I just wondered if that is projected 2024 expense or if that is expense from previous year.
No, these are the 2025, this is the 2025 budget.
So the expenses are projected expenses
Correct.
for 2025?
Correct.
Okay. And when you were talking about the proceeds from the sale of the asset, you said that we have, you're using about $10 million worth of principal and $8 million worth of investment income. And what is the total principal and where is that invested? Just to, if that's able to be
Yeah.
shared, so we
Certainly.
know, because
Well-
I don't see that on here.
No, it's not. The council approved our investment into a CRIM account. That is a low-risk investment allowed for municipalities. We currently have about $170 million in that account, and I'm going to guesstimate that it's given us about 4%, 4 to 5%, somewhere.
During last year, I want to say it was $8.5 million. To be conservative, I've only used $8 million for next year, but we actually did get about $8.5 million for 23.
Okay.
And
So-
we are on, for 24, we are presently at a point where we're at least going to make the 8 million. I again think we're going to exceed the 8 million.
Okay, so I'm close though, right? Is that
Yes.
4 to 5%? Okay, great. Did that answer? Okay, great. Any other questions on the funds of the city before we get into departments?
Just real quick, if we want to go ahead and flip ahead to page 3, which starts us out with council. I'll just review real quick the structure of the document. So this document goes in order of our departments by number. Within each section, it is by fund, then it's by cost center with revenue first and then expenses. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, is that it kind of sometimes looks like you're repeating something only because it's a new fund or a different cost center that may have, say, a training expense, just like you had seen with the 000 none cost center with the general fund. So that's the structure, and there are totals after each revenue and each expense, and then there are totals for, again, by the cost centers, by the funds, and then by the department overall. And just to say that the column with the descriptions, if you do note, those are what were hand put in. They were also duplicated from last year's budget. So if there's anything weird in there in terms of, hey, this is based off of 2022 numbers, we're going to, now that we've gotten through this far, we are going to skim through them and make sure that we have accurate descriptions, because they are really helpful, so that you have a better idea of what the expense is for, and we will update that for the proposed budget. So we know there's a couple in there, and feel free to shoot me an email if you see a whole bunch, but just to let you know that those were keyed in, but they were also pre-populated from the year before, so sometimes they were missed being updated.
Good.
Let's roll.
All right. Let's start off with our wonderful city clerk, Ms. Diana Thompson. And please present the council budget.
That's right. Okay, I'm Diana Thompson. I'm the city clerk, and I'm here to present city council's budget. I would like to start out by saying I didn't follow instructions on on putting in our requests, so some of them came up doubled. So I will tell you what the correct number is for those. Just to point out some things, the other professional services, last year we had it at 22.5, and that was because I put $20,000 in the budget for legal counsel. Well, I cut that in half because I just go on what we've used, and I think we've only used our legal counsel on one occasion maybe. So I just took a shot in the dark and figured that, well, we like Brett so far. She's doing pretty good. So let's just, in case we do come into some head-butting with you guys, we'll just do it on an as-needed basis. So I decreased that. And so instead of $20,000, I made it $10,000 for next year. And then $2,500 for stenographic services for any kind of public hearings that we might have. As far as travel, that should be $2,000, not $4,000, and that will cover all 5 council people if they decide to go to any kind of conferences or trainings. Training is the same. That should be $2,000, not $6,000. And most of my budget are things that are inputted by the administration, so I don't have a lot that I input. So I'll just point out the things that I did input that were incorrect. Printing and binding, that should be $1,500, not $3,000. And the PML membership, Mayor, you might, I'm not sure how you feel about that, but I went ahead and put that in anyway. I'm not so sure that council's ready to let that go, so I did include that in there. And advertising, that should be $10,000, not $19,000. It's an extra $1,000 because I know that there's some legislation that's being worked on for it next year. So I just wanted to accommodate for the advertising of that. Other repair service, that is $400, not $800. And as far as codified ordinances, other contractual services, I'm not going to re-up Folio Views, which was the online codified ordinances that I contracted through them. It was a disaster. So it wasn't received well by our employees. They were spoiled by all the information that I would put on there. So I'm just going to continue to do that because it seemed to benefit them. So I'm just going to continue to update those online for us. So that's,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
so yeah, we're not going to go through them for that anymore. Then on office and data processing, that should be $300, not $600. And then books and subscriptions, that should be $500, not $1,000. And that's about it. I think overall my budget decreased a good amount of money before those errors. Now with those errors out, it's even decreased a lot more from last year.
I like that you're making yourself a hard act to follow. I hope all the rest of the directors are taking note here. No, thank you very much because you answered all of my questions.
Okay.
I was curious about how some of these things doubled over the years, and I can see it was just an input issue.
Exactly.
Was that a part of the process, or was that just a step that you missed or something?
What are you talking about as far as inputting?
Yeah, as far as it getting.
I was putting in what I was requesting, not what the increase that I wanted from last year. So if something was 2,000 last year and I wanted it to be 3,000 this year, I should have put 1,000.
Yeah.
But instead I went 3,000, so I added last year and this year, and then we came up with that.
So, but other than that, the process was good. I'm trying to evaluate the new.
Yeah, it was.
Because this is the first time that I've seen something like kind of not go really well with the open gov process.
We just didn't catch it.
But it sounds like it was just you just missed a step.
Oh, yeah, which isn't hard for me.
Which is rare. Which is rare for you. Don't. I have no further questions. Thank you. Budget team, any questions?
No questions.
Council members, any questions about your budget?
Oh, wonderful.
And anyone else have any questions about the council budget? All right, hearing none, let's move on to the controller's office. Thank you. Thank you, Dee.
Mike Buckingham, York City Controller. Is this on, I guess?
I think so.
There are a couple minor changes here, some decreases and increases, an increase in travel to conferences, a decrease in training of 1,000. Two major items. There's a decrease in other contractual services, which was in the budget last year for an outside auditing firm, which to my knowledge was not used. So we eliminated that in the 2025 budget. So other contractual services for 2025 will be zero. And then there was $2,500 in last year's budget for office equipment, furniture. I'm sorry, not last year, but 2024 budget. That was decreased by $2,500 because we don't need any office furniture. So other than that, changes are really minimal. Any questions?
No, thank you for reducing your budget by $50,000 there. And I have no other questions. Anyone else? Council? Council? Anyone? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Controller. And Mr. Treasurer. Oh, there you are.
I moved over here.
You moved.
The treasurer's budget is all in Fund 10. We have no cost centers in the budget, so the revenue numbers that you see on the first page of the budget are based pretty much on a couple of things. One, as Mike has indicated, we have increased our millage rate this year, so these are very comparable to last year's budget items. The way I arrived at these numbers, I have an ongoing chart of all of the revenue that came in for the different categories of taxes for the first 3 quarters of the year. Then I used the last 3 quarters.
Gotta turn your mic on.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, yep.
Sorry.
We've made Cliff happy.
And then I used the last 3 quarters of 23 to come up with the final estimate. I know these figures are pretty good because I can look right now at what we had predicted and what we've put in, and we're running between 95 and 100% of each of the budget lines. You'll see that our taxes are broken down into current year payments, prior year payments, and delinquent payments. That's consistent throughout the budget. I did cut the real estate prior down to zero because we had $40,000 estimated last year, But I'm also finding that a lot of the refunds when people do appeals are coming out of those prior year funds. So that dropped considerably. I think last year we had 26,000 in that, and we ended up with nothing by the time the end of the year rolled around. There are a few other things in the budget. I think everything is pretty much on scale. There haven't really been any major changes in any of these. We did move several items out of last year's budget to other places. When we were first setting up the budget lines, for example, the pension was put in my budget. I really don't have anything. We've moved that to finance since they actually handle the pension. There was $3 million of that was in there last year, so that's all gone. I have a couple of things that I'll be talking to the mayor and Kim with. We have only one line in the budget for contributions in lieu of taxes. I hope we're going to break that down until we have a line for payments in lieu of taxes, which are agreements that we have contracted with like the Housing Authority, the Strand Capital, some of that, so we can really find out how successful we are when we go to our nonprofits and ask them to make a donation for us. And these are really only donations that are not specified for a given purpose. We have some nonprofits, for WellSpan, for example, that tends to make donations to us, but they are restricted. They're for a certain purpose in the course of the year. So my budget is currently sitting at about $33 million as revenue, and that's about where it was last year as well. It was the same $33 million, little variation, but not much. If you look at the expenses, we've added $55,213,000 for another staff person in the budget. We're planning at the moment to take over refuge collections when they come back from York Water at the end of this calendar year. I'm real concerned that we're going to have enough staff to actually do that. We've cut all of the part-time help out of the treasurer's office over the last few years since I moved into the treasurer's office from the old tax collector's office. We should have about $55,000 in costs to print bills 4 times a year. That with the benefits that Kim has noted as far as additional costs for salaried personnel, we're talking about cutting our costs for collecting refuge by close to $300,000 a year. I don't know how we're going to do it 4 times a year, collect from 14,500 people in the city. That's something I'm asking everybody to give a little bit more thought as we move forward with that. The other big impact that's coming up in our budget is we're going to lose about $1.3 million in mercantile and business privilege taxes because of an appeal. We don't know exactly, this is the Wolf Organization appeal. Yeah, we're going to lose that. The last I heard from Brett,
The results of the audit is still pending.
Yes, this is not a topic for this hearing. This is an ongoing legal issue for the city of York.
It is an ongoing legal issue. But
not appropriate for this hearing.
Plan on that instead of have no plan whatsoever when we're talking about losing $1.3 million.
And we did put in your budget this year that there is a reduction of $450,000, which was on average what we were receiving from the organization in question at the moment, just to prepare ourselves. If between now and the time the proposed budget is in place, there's any adjustment, then we'll make that. But at the moment, we wanted to be kind of safer than sorry. So we do have a reduction in mercantile business privilege tax because of what's pending at the moment.
Correct. I'm not denying that. So if you look at our expense budget last year was $321,700. Currently, it sits at about $300,000. And really, the reduction becomes because we didn't have to pay bond insurance this year. That was $15,000 that we lowered the budget. Any questions?
No, I appreciated your comments on the contributions in lieu of taxes, and I agree with you 100%. There are entities in the city that are under agreement because of their non-taxable status, that they have a legal agreement to pay us a certain amount, and then there are those others that we ask out of their, not just their kindness, but out of their own responsibility, because there are entities in the city that do not pay property taxes, but also enjoy the benefits of our $22 million that we pay for our police force, our, where are we at, 16 million for, 14 million for our fire department, our street paving, our lights. All of these things benefit everybody equally, whether you are required by the government to pay taxes or not. So we certainly appreciate when, out of respect for what we are giving, you are able to find some funds to give to us to help bring you the services that you expect from us, and we do our best to provide. So we will be out there, and council members, anyone, feel free to engage the nonprofits or non-taxed entities that you know to see if they would contribute for the services that they are receiving. So one of the concerns I do see, and I guess this is something that we have to work on as a city, economic development, a reduction in the earned income taxes. And that means that people that live in the city are making less. Because if we're getting less, that means because nothing else has changed in the equation. So if we see a reduction here, that means people in the city of York are actually making less right now. So we have to work more on that. I know over the past years we've been working in economic development, trying to provide grants for small businesses, for entrepreneurs. We've really been working on this, so we will continue to work on it. But please support city businesses, because that's the key thing. We can do all we can as a government to help people start their businesses, to live their dreams, to provide these services. But if people don't take advantage of those wonderful services, those businesses don't survive. And so I can see by this, 5% reduction in earned income taxes that people are making, there's less income out there. That is an absolute problem that we all have to work on together. And the only other item I see, Mr. Treasurer, is that we do have the $50,000 in here to get started on the bringing all the refuse in-house, and we can work from there. I know that we're also looking at adding some finance help too. So
yes,
we'll see how it works, and we'll evaluate again. I don't have any other questions. Anyone here? Council members? Mr. Controller? Can you please approach so everybody can hear you? It is a hearing. It's official.
Mike Buckingham, York City Controller. The question is, there's an item in here on the revenue section for earned income tax prior period, and it's 1.1 million. Why is that so high?
Because people pay their taxes late, and so those are people that paid 23 earned income taxes in '24.
And what's the difference between that one and earned income delinquent?
The ones that are delinquent are from '22 going back further. So the current year is, of course, the '24 taxes. The prior year is the '23 taxes, and anything previous to that are considered delinquent.
Okay, and what's our collection rate on the delinquent taxes? Is it 100%?
I can't answer that question, but it's not particularly good, but has improved over the last few years because the York Adams Tax Bureau collects that tax for us. And I think they've really done an excellent job going after those taxes. In fact, recently, I got some data from them of the number of cases they have actually taken to the Patonetary and to court and have asked for they to stand up for those taxes. And they've done a pretty good job of increasing the amounts of those taxes.
Okay, thank you.
I can give you that information. It's on my desk.
While we're at it, and thank you, Mr. Controller, for that question. It also brings up the real estate taxes and how we are doing. I know we were doing, in those, we're doing relatively well, right? I believe it was, the old saying was 90% are on time, and then 90% of that 10% you get the next year. So we get a 99% collection rate over a period of like 18 to 20 months. Is that still about where we are?
We've collected, yes, we are. In fact, we're at 96.68% through the end of October.
Okay, and so there's still time through the end of the year. They're in penalty phase, but there will be people paying. It's a question that always comes up about people, whether they pay their taxes or not on their properties. And so I wanted to assure folks that over a period of time, not much longer than 1 year, 99% of the taxes on properties are collected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor, as of today, we've had 15.5 million in taxes already collected.
15.5 out of the 16.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for the Treasurer's Office? Yes, Council.
Hi, Elspeth Bupp. So, Joe, Treasurer, could you speak to the earned income distressed pension and distressed pension prior? And because those are large numbers, and I just wonder if you could explain what that revenue is. And I have a second question. It's a small number. The printing and binding, you had $10,000 with a $1,500 reduction, and I think that's below where you have to go out for competitive bid. So do we ever think about going out for a competitive bid for printing and binding, or is that set? And is that going to be enough if we take over the sewer bills?
This does not include the refuge bills, because the refuge bills are not in the treasurer's budget. They're in
Central Service. Yeah, we'll come to those later.
It's environmental services under
environmental.
Public Works.
Yeah.
And we did, I did bid those out. We have less people to sort of bid. Dacia has been giving us the best bid recently. And I gave this to Denise, and so we've got bids for about $55,000 for the 4 mailings, since we're talking about doing it on the quarter. And that's postage, envelopes, printing the bills, the whole thing. Of course, postage is a big change this year. Last year, we sent out bills for school bills this summer for 61 cents, but we did beat the deadline. Next year, it's going to cost 69 cents for every bill. Now, we've been able to keep those bills down, and the way we did that is we've been working with our printers, including the county, so we can pull bills not just by parcel number order, but we can pull bills by address. So I can package all 352 bills for one company and put them in a thing, and we can save lots of money. And the Royal Square, Elite, some of the management firm, Sherman, we always pull those and actually deliver them in the city. So that way we can keep the costs down.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I do think, and thank you, Councilwoman, your point about distress pension earned income, that is a substantial number and also saw a reduction. So is that a reduction that you experienced this year? Is that why we're down 200,000?
Obviously so, or I wouldn't have lowered it.
Okay. All right. So this, it's interesting. I really want to look into this because we know we're at one of the lowest unemployment rates in the history of America right now. And so to see the numbers go down in the city, but then also these numbers are for people that live outside the city but work in the city. So to see those numbers all go down at the same time as a record low employment doesn't make logical sense. I don't know what we can do to look into that, but that's a very...
I mean, there could be various reasons in terms of if somebody, people remotely have moved their offices outside of the city, so then we don't have the workers in the city that we can collect the earned income from. There's probably, we can look into it, but there's probably all kinds of reasons that we may or may not be able to put our thumb on.
Just curious, because it's just, contradictory to the other kind of economic determiners that we have right now. So.
And specifically, to answer Councilwoman Bupp, that is the additional 0.25% of earned income tax that we've been allowed to collect that specifically goes towards our unfunded pension balances.
And those are collected by the York Tax Bureau. And it's actually credited based on Act 205. Learn some more about how distress pension works.
And I didn't quite understand the note here, Mr. Treasurer, about the collection fees that we're paying to York Adams Tax Bureau.
We do pay them a collection fee.
Right, but they're down 15,000. Why would the collection fees go down?
Well, because I serve on the board of the York Adams Tax Bureau. We have a surplus at the end of the year after we had already funded our capital reserve fund. So we lowered the percentage rate for taxes from 1.85% to 1.75%.
Well, please thank the board of the Bureau for us.
Thank the Bureau for being very economical.
Anybody else have any questions for the treasurer? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, next one's mine. It's a great budget. Next. Now, the only increase that we have is some increase in the travel. Now, wait a minute. This isn't. Is that right?
Yes.
The 4? Or is that okay? So what we've found is, what's that? Right. Yeah, but that was only 800. That's only $800. So what this is, twice a year I go to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the expense of those conferences has been going up. The good news is that this past year we received a $75,000 award for work with returning citizens and helping them getting career training within the prison before they're ready to come out. So we're working with South Central PA Works and helping folks get career training so that they are prepared when they get out to actually become part of the workforce. So I think that is a great benefit. So It's not 75,000 that comes into the general fund, but that 75,000 is only used for York City residents. So I think that it is well worth it. And I will say also that I was the first mayor, I think, in 50 years to go to our sister city, Arles, France. And that was because the agreement between the two cities had expired, and they were having a get-together to recommit to this. This may sound a little frivolous, but I think it's really important for the people of the city to understand some things about this. In 1954, right after World War II, the United States, in their efforts to free France from the fascism of Hitler, also bombed the heck out of France, including Arles, France, killing many people, destroying many prominent historic buildings, and a few educators from York came up with the idea that we could reach out. Now imagine, this is only 9 years after the devastation of World War II. People are still living in bombed out buildings. And these folks from York came up with the idea of creating a twinning program, a program where our city would support their city, and they would support us. And we would send over students and teachers and business leaders, and they would send them over to us. And it was a way to try and rebuild friendship during peace, and not let these horrible feelings of war fester. So we became the very first twinning city in the United States, and President Eisenhower saw what we were doing and then helped replicate this program around the country, a way to bring people together, to bring peace among our people and country. So I felt, and many of the mayors from over in Arles, France, and Leinfelden-Echterdingen in Germany, that's our other sister city currently, many of those mayors have come over here and visited us. So I absolutely think that it is appropriate to go over, particularly since it's been 50 years since we had a mayor go over. I think that is a reasonable cost. I believe my total cost was $800 and some dollars for some flights, and then I think it's about $1,000. So I feel that it is a good expense for once every 50 years to do so. And next year is the 50th anniversary of the community Leinfelden-Echterdingen, and I'm also looking to go over there. And a much cheaper and much shorter trip is to what will be our third sister city, and the city from which our Latino population blossomed originally, Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The mayor of Aguadilla, Puerto Rico has agreed to become sister cities with York, Pennsylvania. It's very, very exciting. The first Latino councilman, Abe Amoros, is from Aguadilla. Delma Rivera is from Aguadilla. If you don't know her, then you don't know York. So it's just an amazing, positive thing to bring people, diverse people together. It's even more positive, in my opinion, to move away from a European-centric sister city relationship and spread out into other cultures, particularly cultures that are here, represented here in York, but we don't yet have a relationship with their countries. So I'm excited about this. If people do not think that the value is there, they can talk to me. If council does not think that the value is there, you can do what you feel, but I feel that it is appropriate to have this global peace presence that was started here in York and have it continue. So that is the explanation for the increase. Most of that is due to the increase in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but a small amount is to go on these diplomatic ventures to our sister cities. And I think that is the only substantial increase in our budget. And that is an increase. We were, we were already over 2,500 just for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So that had to increase anyhow. So that's where we are with that. Any questions from the budget team?
No.
Questions from council? Yep.
Queen of Washington, York City Council. I do have a concern with 42070 and your travel 430110. I think that money can be spent wisely elsewhere in the city. We have the 42070 anticipated cost for official commission artwork as an official gift to the sister city in Germany during the renewal of the Twinning Town Charter and other professional services.
Yes, and that does not need to be that high.
Yeah, it's at $3,000.
Yes, I'd be happy to take that down to 2,000. That would be 1,000 or less for that, plus our normal other professional services.
Okay. Yeah, I am concerned about the repeat visit to the sister cities. I hear what you're saying, but I don't see the purpose, to be honest with you, and the reasoning to revisit over and over again. I believe those.
There's no revisit.
You were already there to one, didn't you just go? And you want, this is for 2025 for you to go again, am I correct?
To a different city.
Yes.
A city whose mayor, since I've been in office, I think they've made 3 trips to us. In the last 50 years, or since 1989, they have made many trips to come here. And so I do think it is appropriate to respond in kind one time compared, and I'll bring you numbers for the amount of times that they've come here and, and reached out to us. I do think it is appropriate. Well, I'll be happy to give you more data on that.
Okay, there's more than one city listed here.
I'm sorry, what's that?
There's more than one visit to a.
It does repeat the Arles, France, which
Okay.
that's not the intent.
Okay, yeah, I was getting ready to say.
Oh, yeah, that is.
Mentioned more than one city here.
No, that is absolutely incorrect. No, the trip is to our sister city in Germany.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I will find out when or if the last time. I know that, I'm not sure about the city in Germany, when the last time. I really don't want to underemphasize this. Maybe I'm overemphasizing this, but this original relationship, General Devers from York went to create this relationship. This is not a small thing. This was a big international thing that York did. So I would hate to have it languish over $1,000. Any other questions or comments? All right. What have I got here?
That goes here.
9, 10.
That's the solicitor's budget.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
All right, solicitor
it's me.
is not here. Kim?
Nope, our solicitor's contracted, so.
Ah, yes.
With the solicitor's budget, the one thing of note, which of course, as I start going through here, I'm like, ooh, let me take note of this. Any of our indirect cost allocations, what happens is the solicitor's budget is one of them, where the entire budget is allocated out to the departments to be expensed. What I did notice is all my amounts that are showing up as FY 2024's budget should be negatives, because what we do is we essentially back out the expense as opposed to putting some revenue in. So that is what happens then is it looks like it's a huge difference when really there's no change to this budget anticipated in terms of the expense associated with our agreement with Eckert Siemens for our solicitor work, our paralegal, and I have $25,000 for miscellaneous additional OPS, which where we were talking about the additional audit needed for the mercantile business. Again, that's where we were able to seek additional professional service to assist with that. So yeah, that's the only thing that I'll point out a couple times. If you see a crazy adjustment for anything that says allocations within a budget where it's negative this year, positive last year, that is just a typo on my end. Those need to be negative, so there's not such a crazy adjustment.
So we are staying within the budget that we were hoping to. So we ended up saving about $75,000 from that original budget, right?
Yes.
So through the contracting services, this is working well. I'm glad to hear, or at least city clerk mentioned, that council seems to be getting along with the current solicitors. And to me, it's just an amazing relationship. They're on call. They have 300 different individuals that have expertise in many, many fields, and we save $75,000 from the pre-existing employment of a solicitor as an employee. So I'm happy with the situation. I have no questions. Does anyone have any other questions on the solicitor's budget? Yeah. Nope. Anyone? Council, no? Public, no? All right, great, thank you. Let's move on. Next, we have Human Relations Commission. Director Toomey.
Where do you want us?
Wherever you want.
Just make sure the microphone's on.
Hello. Claire Toomey, Executive Director, Human Relations Commission. We've increased our budget by about $100,000 I'm kidding. We've had some nominal increases, mostly around what we're using money for, in addition to, well, I'll just say additionally, we've added a few additions because of the need for advertisement and having items that we can give away. That has been a real pull in terms of getting folks engaged at the outreach level. You will note that we have had an increase in the CDBG grant, so we were able to at least add $30,000 in revenue with regard to salaries, which is obviously very, very helpful. We've had a really interesting year, and the year has been one that has allowed us to really go beyond just investigating discrimination in the city. We've also been able to collaborate with a number of different agencies, which has really been able to get our name out. We are collaborating with local PD. We are collaborating with the York County Homeless Coalition. We are collaborating with the Stable Housing Collaborative and the Mental Health Collaborative that's also happening in the city. You will note that one of the things, or two of the things that we were able to access last year were 2 grants. And this was through our health budget. One of those grants, both were for $68,000. One of those grants is being used for creating a youth collaborative, which is to create a safe space for youth in the city and in the county, for that matter, to be able to come and talk about those things that perhaps their local school districts are not allowing them to talk about. And so it is our intention to build this youth coalition and also bring both youth from the county and the city together in a safe environment. So that is in its beginning stages. I'm excited because we have a volunteer who is actively involved in assisting with that, so that's really pretty great. The other one is a grant that allows us to offer training and programming to the city. And one example of how we are seeing that is we are collaborating with the library. We've been able to do, and YCCF, we've been able to do a presentation on age discrimination. We have an upcoming program that has this Coalition for Natives and Allies who will be presenting a program that we are co-hosting with the library. So this is pretty exciting stuff that we're able to just get outside the office and not just focus on the numerous people, however, that we see in the city and county who bring cases of discrimination. We remain actively involved with PHRC. We have been able to send both of our staff people to mediation training. They are now both certified mediators, which is really helpful in the work that we do. And so the small increase in the budget that you will see has to do with our ability to do more advertising, have more takeaways, if you will, for folks who come, engaging those who come in and getting them to the table and be more actively involved in the community.
Great. So I love everything you're doing. I just have a couple questions about,
Sure.
about how it's being budgeted.
Yes.
So we do have, because I'm believing that because one of these positions was being funded, is that through ARPA? That is now moving into the general fund.
Correct.
So now that is an increase of $64,000 to the taxpayers.
Correct.
You had mentioned training. I see two places where training has gone up by almost 200%.
So
Is that a mistake?
I think
Because
that's an error.
yeah, because there's
Yeah.
a double, they're the exact same number.
Yes, and so my mistake, I was attempting to consolidate all of our training into one cost center, not recognizing that part of those were in FAP money and others were in general fund. So you have an amount of 1975
Yeah.
as an increase. That is an error.
Okay, in both lines?
Not the one at the bottom.
Okay.
The one at the, well,
Yeah, we can't increase the FAP numbers.
so one of them is an error. The one in FAP, that was an attempt to move it into general. So where that needs to be probably is to stay in FAP, and the one in general, because it can't be moved. I attempted to move that.
So you don't have an intended increase in training. You just plan on using everything available to you when you
Correct.
can. Okay.
Correct.
So can I state it a different way?
Sure.
Are you, so for 43,020,
Yes,
under the general fund money, you want that to be 1,000?
that's what it was.
The original 1,000?
Correct.
Okay. And then down for the FAP training, do you want the original 1,490?
So I don't have the original budget in front of me to know what I attempted to do. I do know that there were a multitude of training line items. Some were in FAP, and we were trying to consolidate it to make it easier as far as presenting this to our commission. And what I didn't realize is that I couldn't move that FAP money.
Okay. So we'll let you guys figure that out.
We'll
but-
figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah. There was no increase in training. Let me just put it to you that way.
Right.
In terms of what we had originally.
And I respect and appreciate the value of the advertising and other supplies.
Yes.
I just have one question here.
Sure.
Because, and to give you the history, and I think you know the history, but, I guess it seems like a lifetime ago, but at one point around 2011, the city was actually looking at eliminating the funding for the Human Relations Commission because we were in such bad financial
Right.
shape. And I fought at that time to keep that funding, but I also kind of had a non-binding agreement that the Human Relations Commission would work more on their fundraising side of
I have an answer
things.
for that.
Okay, but let me finish the question,
Okay.
and it seems like, and the other part is to increase the HUD funding and get that back.
That's the answer.
And, well, but it wasn't an either or, it was an and.
Yep.
So we know that over the years, we have lost HUD funding, and you've been doing a great job bringing back our housing services even stronger than possibly ever, which should qualify us to get that HUD money back, I think, right? Is that what you were?
Yes, almost.
Okay.
HUD had made suggestions that we required some amendments to 185, which I just received from Brett this week on Monday, and so they have to go to council to be approved. There are a few other things, but were just tweaks in the language in order to demonstrate our commitment to what we were doing so that we could get reinstated with that, so that we would then be eligible for reimbursement.
Great.
Right.
And then the other side of it, though, is the fundraising event, which the Dr. Holiday Luncheon had originally been an event to raise funds for HRC, not to just keep replicating the event over and over again. So I see that you have a fund balance of over $17,000 from the last event, which is great. That means you were making money between donations and ticket sales. You were making money during the event. So when you are asking the taxpayers to now give you $65,000, but you raised $17,000 over here, I'm finding an opportunity for the Dr. Holiday, or now the Diversity Award Dinner, is that what it's called?
Just the diversity event.
The diversity event, to provide the purpose that it had been expected to provide and was providing in the past, to help pay for the actual functions of the Human Relations Commission. So I would like you to take a look at what your expected budget is for, not for an extravaganza, but for a reasonable diversity event, and then see if some of this fund balance can be used to pay for the amount that you're asking the taxpayers to increase in your budget.
I have no problem with that. That is the first that I heard that this fund was for anything other than replenishing itself to repeat it the following year.
Yeah, it has always been a fundraiser.
But I hear you, but it is the first I've heard that it was in order to provide revenue in order to pay expenses. My understanding has been, and I don't have a problem with what you're suggesting, by the way. I do know that the commission has to vote on that. That is not a decision that I can make. That is something that has to go in front of the commission. They're the ones that have to, because their understanding is also the same, that as we generate the money, and we did very well, but as we generate the money, it goes back into that pot specifically for that. And in a conversation that Kim, you and I think had earlier in the year, we discussed that that could move, but the commission would have to agree upon it. They'd have to vote it. So if there's a history, I don't.
My concern is that that fund has been used with ticket sales and donations to run the event. So that, and we have to double check what may be left over. I think the carryover amount, we can double check that there is that fund left over, that money left over. Otherwise, we have to may have to either increase your expected revenue if you think you can cover the expenses, or reduce the expenses. So we do need to double check that. But past that, we have been running that cost center line was specifically for running the event. It doesn't mean we can't have another line item in order for contributions that come in. That would be under Fund 10 and not under 26 if it's supposed to be going towards the operating costs. So my suggestion was, since the money that was received was specifically earmarked from those people who contributed to it for the purpose of the actual luncheon or the meeting in general, that we would have to make an official act of the commission in order to say, now we're going to roll that into operations.
For the next event. We couldn't do it for the last event, as my understanding.
That was my concern. We don't want to be like, hey, you paid for this, but we're using it for that. Even though it should all be related and won't be a concern, I just wanted to make sure that if there were steps that needed to be taken, that we did it.
I do want to say, as a contributor, I never had that expectation that the money would only be used to have another event. I thought my money was going to help the HRC provide its mission for the people. So that's why I've given every year to the HRC, was not to support a never-ending event. It was always to support the work of the HRC. So I'm not sure where that concept was that came from, that people were giving only to give to the dinner. They were giving to HRC so that HRC could provide the amazing services that HRC provides.
I don't disagree that is a legitimate collection of the money and for what it should be used. I'm just telling you that that was not how it was presented to me when I first started. And there were some concerns that shifting that midway, as in we just did an event, now we're taking the money from that event, could cause some issues, as Kim suggests.
Yeah, I'd like for us to go back and look at some of those old budgets and to see if money was transferred out of those funds because
We can, but I've never seen that. In my impression, I learned everything about that cost center from Cherie Allwine, and the impression, it was always that it was specifically, because it's special projects. Just like the police department has a Fund 26 special projects specifically as whatever the police department might need to use it for, that's a separate cost center. So I think it's important that if you do plan on running the event, we should keep a cost center for that. But as part of the proceeds, that if there's more left over every year, that we could then roll it into the operations, that's fine if that's what we want to do. We'd want to move that we'd want to structure it so that we can pull it apart. But I've never been privy to a transfer of money. Jerry, I don't know if you have.
We have never transferred. All the money that is in that fund is in Fund 26. And I can tell you, I don't know off the top of my head what the balance is, but I can tell you right now it well exceeds the $17,000 that's in the budget.
Okay. Yeah, I'm talking 2012. I'm talking before any of you were here. 2012, 2013, in that period. So again, if it were not for your request from the taxpayers, I would not really be pushing this issue that much. But it is something that I guess I do talk about it every year, because this is something that was agreed to, that HRC, because we have other supporters that support the mission. Mm-hmm. We have supporters outside in the county that support, stopping discrimination. We've got people from outside in the county asking for our help.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all on any of this. It's just the logistics that we have to figure out.
Yep, very good. I have no further comments or questions other than thank you for everything. The commission and the department has been doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No.
Council? No. Yep.
You too big.
For those that can't see out there,
both of the Buckinghams were.
Both of the Buckinghams. I think this is the first.
In trouble now.
This is the first elected official conflict I've seen between the Buckinghams. Who's going to speak first?
Claire, just a clarification.
Yeah.
This is Mike Buckingham, City Controller. On the general fund, salaries and wages, your projected total is $114,490. Is that two positions?
I'm going to need some help with that because some of it is ARPA money, and it has shifted because my housing.
Yeah, it's two positions.
It's two positions, and then further down under ARPA, there is one position.
I thought the ARPA position was.
There were two positions that were. There were essentially two positions that had one position that was fully funded, and that was specifically for housing eviction counseling. There was another one where we had at one point a full-time investigator, and the budget had been reduced to a part-time investigator. So we did have ARPA funds going to making the part-time investigator full-time. So what this year the difference is that specifically the funding for the housing eviction counselor is not available for ARPA for 25, but there is money available towards the investigator for 25. So the full salary for the investigator is in ARPA for one more year, and then that's where the housing eviction coordinator position.
I was confused because I thought the ARPA funding was being eliminated for.
We're able to keep the one in, just not
So
the
the total
housing.
between the two funds is three positions.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then that is the money, hopefully we will be able to use money from HUD
That's the plan.
to support that position in future year. But we did not want to, since the department is running so smoothly and wonderfully with just three positions, we didn't want to hamstring them and just leave them hanging out there. So we're hoping over the next year, we're going to be able to pull that money together to use the federal dollars to get that back off of the
General fund.
yeah, get it back off the general fund. Yes.
Oh, there's not a microphone. I thought there was a microphone over there.
Betsy Buckingham, York City Council. Just a quick question. Could you explain what FAP is?
Yes, FAP is, okay, so as the mayor suggested, we had a agreement with, it's the money that comes from HUD. So this is leftover. So historically, we have been in a relationship with HUD whereby they reimburse cases that we resolve or that we work according to their criteria. within housing. We submit that information to them. They reimburse us a sum of money. This money is left over from before 2014, or I think 2014 is when it closed. So in 2014, the contract with HUD was discontinued, but there's still money left. It has to be spent a certain way as it pertains to housing. So we can't just spend it on anything in particular. It has to be something that relates to housing with regard to either discrimination or someone in need. It is conversation that we've been having over the past year on the best way to do that. So we don't give it back, but we also can't spend it any way we want.
Thank you. And then just one little minor detail. Coalition, Youth Collaborative Coalition, just check the spelling on that.
Oh, thank you.
Dang it.
And that is just FAP is Fair Housing Assistance Program? Yeah, Fair Housing, HUD's Fair Housing Assistance Program. Yep. Anyone else have anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are skipping ahead to page 109 to the police department.
Yeah, Joe, go home.
Joe, go get some rest, Joe.
Joe, you're here like 60 hours a week. Go home.
Nope.
Okay. I think I'm on now. Good evening, everybody. So I know the format's a little different this year, and we're not looking to go into highlights at all, but I just want to take a second to thank everyone. I want to thank City Council. I want to thank the budget team. I definitely want to take a second to thank my captains, my finance captain, Captain Akey, and Captain Lentz, who does programming for me, for us as a department. And they will be offering much of the actual discussion this evening about our budget. But I know that the mayor will be happy as we get into it, even if we don't go deep into highlights this year. But I just wanted to kick off and start by saying that we had another amazing year. I'm proud of that, of what we've been able to offer our community, what we've been able to do with the resources that we've been given. And Mayor, you will be happy because thanks to the help of Kim Robertson, this year is surprisingly, we're sitting on a budget neutral offering. So that's different for me because, you know, I'm generally a person that asks.
Get used to it.
So I'm definitely proud of that. But as they get into talking about the nuts and bolts of what we do and what it costs, I just want to take a second for the community and for anybody that wonders why. And oftentimes I end up hearing this about much of the stuff that I tend to want to do, or what people will call pipe dreams, or whether the philosophy is strong. Everybody generally will wonder, is it really necessary? Does it take all that, is a comment I generally get. And as you hear from Captain Akey and Captain Lentz about the nuts and bolts, I'm happy to be able to sit here today and give people some of the results of what it's yielded, what it looks like. Even with initiatives, and we're very focused on outreach, we're very focused on connecting with our community, and we do a lot of it, so much of it through initiatives and the work of our great people that are part of this department. But even when you look at initiatives like the steering wheel lock initiative that we put out this year, what that resulted in was a 50% reduction in our motor vehicle thefts. So while people on the front end saw something that they thought was cute or showy on our part, it literally resulted in 50% less motor vehicle thefts. Some of the other outreach and gun violence prevention work that we do, and the bringing on the extra officers and the expansion of TIFLO's team with GVI, what it resulted in was a 50% reduction in shots fired calls throughout our city. That's half the time our babies and our mothers and our homeowners and our store owners have to hear gunfire at nighttime. What it resulted in was a 63% reduction in people being shot in this community. What it resulted in was a 75% reduction in homicides here in York. And a detective bureau that's carrying about an 80% clearance rate. And most importantly, the thing that I think that I am personally most proud of is now with the addition of being a police department that's included a customer satisfaction survey, which is something that most times we would never go back and ask what you thought about how we interacted with you. But now with the implementation of a program such as that, we now know and can quantify that even here in York, a community that's had such a historically strained relationship with our police department, we carry every day 85% satisfaction rating with our community, with our stakeholders and our consumers. So for people that wonder, does it really take all this with the Fall Fest and the outreach and the therapy dogs and the beards and the focus on trying to diversify our department, I contend now that the numbers are finally in 4.5 years later, absolutely. So with that, I will get off my soapbox and I will let Captain Akey take over and Captain Lentz do what they do.
Good evening, everyone. Just reviewing from the top under the revenues very briefly is that we're expecting an increase of $5,000 for traffic fines due to where we are this year for the balance for revenue. You'll notice 2 new ones for $15,000 each for ATF reimbursement and DEA reimbursement. Where that came from is we actually received from all 3 of those federal partners, our task force officers that work with them, and we were putting it under a single pot before under U.S. Marshals. So for transparency, we wanted to break that out to show which agency each of those officers were being reimbursed from. And those are just overtime that's being used for those investigations. There's a reduction of $400,000 in revenue from public-private contributions, and that reflects that WellSpan's contribution is taken out for 25 because we don't know what that's going to be in 25. Our police department report sales, they're also up this year, so I increased that by 5,000 as well. As we get into the Fund 10 expenses, there's a significant increase there that perhaps BA Kim can help me out with the 2.5 that's listed.
Yeah, just for an update for everybody, we're still in interest arbitration with our FOP union regarding their collective bargaining agreement that was supposed to start 2023. So that's why you'll see that there's a minimal increase to the salaries at the top, because that's only representing a cost of living increase for the civilian, the non-uniform employees, and any kind of longevity adjustment. So in anticipation that we're towards the final stages of interest arbitration and to plan ahead for next year, I did include a lump sum amount that would be able to account for the essentially 3 years of base COLA increase for the FOP officers and the resulting retro pay that we will owe potentially the whole way back to 2023 for any officer that was active at the time. So we wanted to make sure that we included that in this budget so we had it available to us when the time comes. It very well will result in, me potentially coming to council saying, hey, I got to transfer out of this bucket for the contingency into salary because this is what we need to cover the expense. But I wanted to make sure we budgeted for it. So that's what that is. It was my doing.
All right. So you'll also see that we have a $50,000 increase request for overtime, as you just heard the commissioner speak, with all the proactive details that we're doing and the investigations that we're doing. We want to make sure that we're not doing the right thing because we don't have the overtime money to do that. And our success with what we've been using that overtime for now has paid off quite well. Continuing down through, you'll see when we get to the clothing, uniforms, and equipment, I have a lot of these itemized out very, very clear for what those increases are. The increase of $5,000 for clothing, uniforms, and equipment is just due to contractual increases for the year. Everything else is held the same. There's a $5,000 increase in tuition reimbursement. That's for officers that are expected to continue their college education next year, for the contractual reimbursement that they get for that. Travel, we're requesting a $6,200 increase in travel, and that is due to a lot of these conferences that we attend and advanced trainings are not held locally. There is a circuit of training that happens, but the local circuit is stagnant. The local circuit would be some of your supervisor training schools that just run in cycles. With technology being what it is and the regional conferences being where they are, our budget that we had now has been exhausted every year, usually by September. So this is letting us continue that to expand our skills that we have. A slight increase overall of $15,000 for training. And again, that's adding in with those breakdowns in the itemization of the CVSA school that we are doing away with. I'm sorry if that's still in there, but it's the crime scene tech training that we are doing right now. It takes about a year to a year and a half to have all of our officers hit all the classes that they need to be forensic evidence technicians on scene. So that amount is the increase that we need to have our officers replaced that have retired.
So Captain, I'm sorry, so CVSA is out, but the amount stays the same?
It's just in the itemization, the number there. If you see the investigative services.
Yeah, the 8,500, you want the 8,500 to stay the same?
Yes.
It's
yeah.
just the description.
Shouldn't have been there for any more for that. I apologize to you for that. Continuing on. There's a $1,000 increase for the association dues and conferences that are itemized as beside it. Some of that increase has been due to the community association dues that we have with our partnerships that we have with the Rotary Club and the support that they give back to our agency. Advertising has stayed the same. You'll see the sewer, water, and electric that was added in, as Kim said in the beginning of the presentation tonight. Building repair and service, we're asking for $25,500 to be added to that account. And the reason being is our side door plaza, which is one of our secured doors that comes into the side of our building, is well overdue for replacement. Our last estimate through Dave Rudolph and the contractor is $18,000 for that door. And we also have a recording room upstairs that the officers work in that has been chewed down to the concrete through the linoleum and tile. And all their workstations are sitting in little pits right now. So when they have their chairs on wheels, they have to engage four-wheel drive to move their desk back from how bad those areas are.
So wait, just a question for the team here. So we want this to go under the police budget and not?
It is traditionally police and fire have their own building repair services budget. That, of course, is in addition to what Dave Rudolph's budget and building maintenance covers for the entire city.
The roof is under.
Well, it's under ARPA, but it's in his, that was under his for this year, yeah.
All right, and the room and the flooring repair, we will chip in the extra money for the plastic things to lay down, and they will use them.
Yeah.
And then they will not run the floor down into the ground.
Continuing on, you'll see The next increase is actually, a decrease from radio communications. That's gone down $35,000 back to the original request from 23, which was 20,000. That decrease is due to the fact that we used $35,000 last year and some well-spent money to purchase 50 replacement radios for the department. We're sitting good on radios right now, so we did not need to increase that. Other contractual services, there's a $14,000 increase request for that, and that is to go towards a portion of what's called a Power Ready, Power IA, Power Action software suite. And what that suite will do is it will help our discipline process inside track the exact violations that the officers had to maintain that database. It will also be the FTO documentation platform that we'll use for field training. We do a 20-week field training program on our officers, and it requires them to write in a Microsoft Word document now each time, which is compiled in a drawer, which is compiled in a file folder somewhere else. This is going to connect everything that we have with our policies and procedures, as well as when we take an officer out for field training, to be able to connect the dots, so to speak, between their training day and what was covered during that training day directly, instead of everything being in separate compartmentalized areas. The next increase that I have is not really an increase, it's a carryover under weapons and ammunition. You'll see an increase requested of $15,000. You're going to see that happen in a couple of the other funds as we continue on. That's actually an open PO from this year that I do not expect to be filled during the calendar year of this year and before this budget closes. So it'll probably be delivered in March or April of next year, but we typically do not pay for a product until we receive it. And ammunition is running about 12 to 18 months behind when we order it. Wow. So we've had a lot of these carry over from year to year. So the actual increase for that amount is really only about $1,000, and that's just due to the increased costs with range fees that we're looking at.
So these are, just to be clear, these are funds that were budgeted for this year, not expended. So now we're going to give you the extra money next year.
If it's not spent by the end of this year, yes.
If the orders don't come in, we're going to give you that money that you didn't spend this year.
And this is helpful. You'll see this in vehicles as well. And we actually had to come back to council this year because we ran into the same issues because there's a delay, excuse me, in the delivery of the vehicles we're ordering as well. So though the budgeted funds are available when the order is placed, and we have an approved purchase order, if the actual invoice doesn't come in until later, we can apply invoices from a purchase from a previous year through about first quarter into the new year and still apply it to the previous year's budget, but after that, we can't. And so that's when, if there isn't room in the current year's budget to accommodate it, that's when we're coming back and asking for a budget amendment using monies not otherwise appropriated. So we're trying to avoid that, but we're also keeping an eye on it. If for some reason between now and when the final proposed budget is presented, we can remove any of that, we will, but just the timing wise, it doesn't look like we will be able to.
All right, and continuing with other supplies and materials, we're asking for an additional $18,500 in that fund. That is specifically $10,000 to purchase a one-time purchase of the new polygraph equipment that we're planning on using, not only for investigations, but as part of our hiring process. And there's also $8,500 to purchase an additional drone that would allow a more rapid deployment for patrol frontline officers to use. The next one that we have, and this will be Captain Lentz that can help explain this, but we are requesting $201,000 towards a new report management software solution. And we have some information that we have a grant that's coming for that. It just hasn't been finalized, but it might be up to $125,000 that we will be getting towards that request. And if we do get that, obviously that request number would drop. But if you want to explain for a second, Dan, what that is all about.
Is it on? Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, we moved to an RMS system called Cody. At that time, they had purchased, I think it was under Chief Bankert, he had conducted a 5-year agreement, so we didn't have to pay anything for the last 5 years. Well, that expires at the end of the year, so the current software that we're using is severely outdated. It doesn't support our needs anymore, and so we started to go and look for the next best thing, and we found something that will allow us to be more mobile, so we can use it on our workstations out in the field. If we're taking a complaint in a resident's house or wherever they are. It's also NIBRS compliant, and so a lot of the grant funding that we're seeing now is moving towards instead of submitting UCR data, it's NIBRS. It's the new reporting, so it'll make us NIBRS compliant, so that way we'll have better access to more grants. Regardless, our costs for RMS would have went up this year anyways, and long term, this is a cheaper solution than what it would be if we stayed with Cody.
And so what's the annual subscription fee? You're saying that Cody would have cost us money.
Cody would be, correct me if I'm wrong, I think $45,000 a year. The one that we're looking for, eForce, is about $28,000 a year.
But a $200,000 up front.
Correct, but we're fairly confident that we got the grant for $125,000. It's just a matter of actually receiving that award letter.
And coincidentally, this was the last piece, and I just want to give kudos to Captain Lentz and Aki, because this was the last piece that we needed to be able to bring the patrol tablets online, to have them be able to do the virtual work and
telepolicing.
Yeah, the telepolicing portion, all of that. This was them exploring companies and finding. This was the last piece we needed to be able to finish that off. So.
And just to clarify, that $200,000, the total cost of that is the implementation fee and the data transfer, which the data migration, they're expecting to take at least 9 to 10 months to happen. So if we would even start the process in January, we will not be able to go live with that system until probably fall of 2025. So as a result, we'll have a year that we have to have Cody at the same year. So that's why you'll see Cody is still listed in the other contractual services for $49,100, the first line item at the top. And then in 26's budget, it would no longer be Cody. It would be this new company for the $28,000 a year fee that they had offered us.
How long is that $28,000 per year hold for? Is that another 5-year contract or?
That one, I believe.
I think it's 3 years. I'll find out, but I think it's a 3-year initial agreement.
3 years is what we believe the minimum contract was for that one. Let's see here. Continuing on, as we get down into community services, other supplies and materials, there's actually a $3,700 near reduction in that amount. That's based on what our expenses have been for this year.
Just real quick.
Hold on, you skipped a big one.
I'll fill in for the crossing guards. That represents the new agreement that we put into place for this school year from all city management. So we'll see what we can get with going out for an RFP at the beginning of the year for the beginning of the 2025. So hopefully we won't need to use all of that budget because we'll get a cheaper option. But for now, that represents a full year of the new contract.
Okay, so the 58,000, so 40, wait, how are we getting a $44,000 increase in?
Because the total contract increased and we received 50% from the school district. So if the contract expense increased, then the amount they will reimburse us increases.
Right, but the increase is 58,000. Half of that is only 29,000. So why is this 44? It looks like you're still using the 75% calculation from 10 years ago. Right? Am I reading that wrong? The cost went up 58. That means the revenue should go up 29.
Well, it's referencing what was in the budget for 24. So the numbers for 24 might have been inaccurate, but it's a $323,530 is half of $647,060, which is the accurate amount. Explaining what we did a year ago, couldn't do.
Okay.
There's this $3,600 that he was talking about up here.
Yeah, okay.
Now I think we're on page 114.
Well, I think we can, well, all right, salaries, I see. Sorry, go ahead, Cap.
So the rest is the breakouts that we have put in for the community service division. Again, there's $3,700 that's lowered in other supplies or materials based on what we spent this year. The remaining funds then are for the hospital resource officer program. Those are calculated by the BA as well as GBI, which then just takes us back to our Fund 26 accounts, which is based on what we have on hand in those accounts at this time and what we anticipate our revenue being in '25.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm good until the bottom of 116. I don't think we have to, everything else is allocations and things. At 116, what is the reduction in this particular police grant? That's PCCD, so we're seeing a reduction in the PCCD grant? 34020, the second to last line on 116?
That would have been from the, I believe that's going to be the expenses that have already been used for equipment in that line as part of that grant budget. So that's I believe it's a 2-year grant, and those are the expenses that we would have had for the other supplies and materials used as a result of that grant this year.
So we're now using that grant for one detective? Is that what that?
It runs out, it expires.
Well, no, it's there. The overall, the amount of the revenue we get is a reimbursement of our expenses. So if you skip ahead to page 117 and you see the expenses, you'll see that there, of course, was a reduction in the expenses this year based on the reduction in the health insurance. I believe we changed which detective was assigned, so there could be reduced in the salary based on longevity. So that's the difference. The reduction in the revenue is based on a reduction in the actual expenses that we'll be seeking reimbursement for. But the big amount is we had that upfront of $31,200 in other supplies and materials that we don't need this year.
All right, then another 34020, we see another big reduction here in the revenues. Is that another reimbursement?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's pretty much the same story all through these.
Yes, and then some of these, what was budgeted last year in terms of the staffing had adjusted in terms of the number of officers or which officers, and again, changing how much was actually needed to be budgeted this year for the staffing and the reimbursement.
And just a general question I heard, and we don't have to go through all this stuff because it's just grants coming in and out. But the money for the fall festival, that is not taxpayer funded, correct? That is.
The money that was used for Fall Fest this year was entirely raised privately out of special projects account.
I just wanted to reiterate that because I've had that question. And by the way, just incredible, incredible event. Thank you. Now, the trauma-informed care on the bottom of 119, that's ARPA funding. Are we going to be able to spend that?
Yeah, we're finishing up the job analysis and we're anticipated to have that hired by the end of the year per
Okay.
ARPA regulations.
That is extremely exciting. Thank you. So just to let folks know, these are individuals when there is a traumatic scene, a homicide, a shooting, and something like that. We will have people that can come right on the scene, completely professionally trained. I think all of us have done it in our own way to try and come out and console those victims of violence, the families, but not one of us has the official proper training to do so. So now we are going to actually have trauma-informed, psychology-trained individuals that can come out and meet with people when they're having their absolute worst day ever. So, good job. And what is this last transfer from general fund?
That's capital projects.
Yeah.
That is for the expenses that are listed here.
Oh, okay.
Again, a couple open POs and their request for those vehicles.
So how many new vehicles are you actually requesting this year?
We are requesting 2 cars. The cost of them right now for the CoStar pricings are $48,500 for the vehicle and $28,000 in the upfit with LPR.
All right, team, any other questions? No. Hope you don't mind, I kind of went through them as we were going because there's so much in the police budget. Council members, questions? Please. No minor questions.
Queen of Washington, York City Council. I just had a question, line item, I'm going way up. 44070, there's like a over, I think, $3,000, I'm going off the top of my head.
Can you tell me what page you're on now?
I'm not sure what page. It's electric.
So police traditionally have had one electric utility item that was always in their budget, and that was specifically for the bill associated with the Cherry Lane Storage Building. Now, they've also inherited the electrical cost for the police station.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering why there was such a significant increase. Yeah.
Hi, Elizabeth Bups, Councilwoman. Question for the Community Service Division of the Police on page 113. And I may just not reading it correctly. Do we have I don't see salaries in that section, so I wondered where the salaries are for the Community Services Division staff.
They're included in the 0000 cost center. It's just their specific additional expenses. Several years ago, we decided to give its own cost center so we can see what they need to budget for their services.
Okay, thank you. And this is a multi-page thing. Where is it?
We did give them a pay raise.
Page 119, the ARPA trauma-informed care. We've got 424, expenses, other contractual services. You were talking about the trauma-informed care advocate, which sounds great. And that budget amount is $184,000. Is that salaries, or is there a corresponding?
It's currently in here, just like you see it, as other contractual services. It's just recently, we've turned gears on that in terms of bringing the individuals in-house. We were working with an outside agency that fell through, so that if we were paying an agency to provide the trauma and care individuals, then we would pay them. But now that we're bringing it in-house, yes, I will be amending that budget, still keeping within the 184, which is what's left in that overall approved project, but we'll break it down in terms of the new plan that will include individuals being employed with the city.
So that might be some full-time people or some part-time people, plus all the allocations, is that right?
Correct. Starting with determining what, essentially what Captain Len said, we are working on the job description, so we know essentially what requirements we needed for the position, so we can determine what essentially pay rate we're kind of work backwards into the budget then, in terms of how many we can afford with what we have available.
Okay. The first line item, it's minor. It says there's $700 tow fee permit or license. Do we rotate those? It says 3 companies do the towing. Do we rotate them? Do you solicit bids or?
I know. They're rotated, right? You just, yeah, they're in a rotation. Yep.
Every other year or something, or every other?
No, it's per use. So like maybe Dara's will get and then the next time we need a tow, it'll be Louis. Next time is J&K. And yeah.
And those are the 3 that we use, and there's nobody else at this point.
Those are the 3. Yeah.
And are they selected?
No, anybody can
come to us? Or?
Anybody that can apply. The council has passed requirements, so that is in an ordinance. I'm not going to go through all the things, but you can ask the clerk, and she can provide you with the ordinance.
Okay.
But yes, anybody that fulfills the requirements can apply, and then that's the $700 fee is for them to apply to be on this list.
Could you have more than 3 if you want?
Of course, we can have more than 3.
Okay. Thank you.
We did have more than 3, but unfortunately, they disqualified themselves. So we're happy to have more. Any other questions for the police department? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Supler. My questions are related to 113, page 113. And my first comment is, I believe Ms. Robertson said that we're going to get, hopefully, maybe a new crossing guard company that maybe is a little bit cheaper.
We're going to put out a request for proposal.
RFP.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yep.
I'm also on the school board, so that's something we would definitely like.
Mm-hmm.
Cut that cost for residents since
We save money, you save money.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then my question, I saw above that, a couple lines above that, under other supplies and materials, it says purchase of a polygraph equipment. And I was kind of just, what exactly that's about? Because I've heard that some of these technologies aren't exactly foolproof and you can't use them.
It's hard to say that any of the technologies are foolproof, but we've gone through some pretty significant research and listened to some experts at the state police and other locations that have advised us that the polygraph is the direction that we should be going. It's no secret that a couple people have gotten past our guards.
Yes. Okay.
So it's for internal use. You did say that there might be some other uses for it, but I believe the internal use is certainly the reason why I will approve it.
Yeah, that's the primary goal, is for the internal use. And like you said, we've gone to the experts and made ourselves transparent, took the hits, and you're looking at 70-80% more efficient than what we're currently using. And we're already seeing it it's already helping to vet people already, like just the first run through.
And to be clear, we were using everything that was recommended to us, and we had been using it for years. And then
that one is too many, and then to have another one come up, I totally get that.
Yeah. So we're trying to, we redoubled our efforts to make sure that everything that we were doing was top notch. And this is one of the things that's been recommended to us to maximize our process.
Thank you. And then my other one, it's not specific to the police department. I think I brought it up before, is having more communication to our Haitian population. You know how we have the English and then the Spanish, also having like a Haitian translation when we're putting a lot of that mass communication out.
Well, we have been working on, so we have a Haitian Creole speaker now in our Bureau of Health. And I've been working on hiring another. Haven't gotten the application. We started off, we had a couple applications. They didn't fit what we were doing. So we're still seeking individuals to apply, particularly for the community ecosystem coordinator positions. Those positions, I still have one or two available where I would be able to hire somebody that would work directly with the community. But yes, your recommendation of the translation is heard.
Thank you.
I'll just add, we have a female officer who speaks Haitian Creole, and she's been working with that population right now.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And I didn't know that. How many languages are now represented? This is something that we don't talk about enough. And I think our numbers are, the commissioner's numbers and mine are a little bit different. I think he said that we had a diversity rating of about 6%. I believe it was about closer to 9% when I became mayor. If you look at the, basically the non-white male officers, we had, I think, 9 out of 100. I think your number was 6 out of 100. But now we are close to 30. Speaking how many different languages? 7, 8?
It's at least 8.
Yeah. The female officer that I'm referring to speaks 5 or 6 different languages, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that's just one person, but what is it? Mandarin and there's Arabic,
Arabic, yeah. French, Haitian Creole, Spanish.
Yeah, I'm just proud of you guys, and you've really changed the police department, literally the face of the police department, but also our ability to communicate with our community. And all of this has really changed within the last 2 years. Any other questions or comments for the police department? Yes, oh, sorry, Mr. Controller.
Mike Buckingham, City Controller. I guess this is for Captain Akey. A couple questions on the well span. Lost my place. Shoot. Public private contributions market 36030. Public safety donation from WellSpan.
Which page are you on?
On page 110. Public-private contributions, there's a decrease of $400,000.
Oh, I'll be able to answer that. The fact.
Well, hold on a sec.
Okay.
Because there's another line on page 115, which shows a decrease of $621,000 in public-private contributions. So that's a total of over $1 million decrease in public-private contributions, which is not showing as revenue, to my knowledge anywhere. Is that right?
Well,
because you said you don't know what the amounts are going to be?
Correct. So that's just representing what was in the 24 budget. Once we amended the 24 budget, when we knew what the WellSpan contribution was going to be for the year and how we needed to add it to our budget. So what you're seeing in the 24 was what we amended when the time came. And so now we essentially backed it out because we want to start fresh for 25 with a 0 in those line items for expected revenue until we actually are aware of what the contribution will be and how it's decided to.
So the budget will have to be amended to show those numbers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
What's the amendment deadline? 3 months?
No, you can amend anytime you want.
Okay.
No, but it's a verbal agreement, but it takes a different form every year. So they essentially request they request that I submit a list of how we're going to use the funds. In some years, we weighted it more towards the police department. In some years, when we were making big purchases for the fire department, we weighted it more that direction. And so we are currently finding that the Bureau of Health is going to need more support than they've gotten before. So that's...
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted, when that showing no revenue in those line items, so that will be amended later.
Yes.
Thank you. I noticed most of the salaries and wages are reduced. I don't know any specific line items, but
it's
pick a couple out. Is that?
Yeah, I can double check the numbers, but the mayor made a good point. We've had many retirements and exits, which means that they have been replaced with officers whose contract starts them at a lower rate, which means though our count might not change, the actual salary expense with the officers we have in place now as opposed to what we had a year ago, they cost us less.
So that's why the pension number is also going down?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. When you're budgeting salaries and wages, are you using the current contract rates?
Well, specifically for I use whatever rate will be in place for the year we're budgeting for the FOP, since they are essentially, the contract is just a continuation of 2022, which means that their base pay is the same as 2022 at the moment. That is what is used. The difference is that those officers obviously have gained 3 years of longevity, so they're not paid exactly the same as they were in 22, but they're obviously not getting paid what they should be getting paid in terms of a contract in place with regular cost of living adjustments.
Yeah, so the arbitration contingency of $2.5 million, is that just for salaries to be made up prior to 2025?
No, it's a combination of what will be needed in 25 based off of whatever the cost of living adjustments are awarded for the previous years and for 25, and also the retro pay that we will have to pay for the adjusted salaries for whatever the awarded cost of living adjustments would be for 1/1/2023, 1/1/2024. So it's a combination of essentially everything we would need to get them caught up.
Plus the increased rates for the 2025 salaries.
Yep.
And is that fully loaded? Does that include pension and FICA?
It would include FICA, yes. The pension amount won't change right away because the pension amounts are based off of the MMO that is calculated to be owed the year for the budget. Now, we will see an impact in terms of the MMO calculations every year is based off of the previous year's salary. So we're going to see an impact as we get caught up with them is that our calculations for MMO for 2026 is going to be a big jump because now we're going to be caught up with the salaries. And then, unfortunately, just the way things work, we're also going to see an impact to our workers' comp insurance policy. Though we're fully insured now, the actual premiums are still calculated similar to the way that our self-insured were, which is based off of our anticipated salary for the new policy year. And then when that year is over, we have to provide them actual numbers and true up the amounts. So we are going to see a hit in 2026 because of us getting, if the contract was in place, it would be a gradual increase, but because of essentially having to get caught up for 3 years in 1 year, we're going to see a hit for MMO. And
okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the police department? Nope. Manuel, good to see you.
Manuel Gomez, resident, City of York. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the commissioner and the team for the particulars. We might need to put this in the budget.
Did you get that, Cliff? Put that in your budget.
Taller than me. When it comes to moving away, perhaps from the Cody RMS system, is there a viable alternative that would reduce or eliminate the data migration costs? Could you stick with Cody if you're anticipating moving away?
Yeah, we couldn't. It's housed in a SQL database, and so no matter what we go to, they're going to have to migrate from that SQL database into a new SQL database.
Enough said. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Councilwoman, please.
Hi, Elspeth Bupp, Council. So I was actually just looking at the York County Control MDC contract, York County SPCA Animal Services, Klug Animal Services after hours, monthly fee varies based on use. Wanted to find out if there is any portion of that that would cover the SPCA cost to spay or neuter community cats. We have lots of community members who do their own trapping of community cats in colonies, and it's a real help. And they put out the $20 per cat on their own. And if it isn't in here, that's something that I've been talking with some people about trying to get some grant funding to cover it, because there are pockets of people doing spay neuter every day. And the SPCA thankfully offers a discounted rate if you bring the cat in a trap. So I just wanted to learn more about this $78,000 York County Control, maybe that's not pet related, MDC contract, SPCA Animal Services, $32,000, what that covers. Klug Animal Services, $22,000. If you could just speak briefly to what that covers. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. No, I believe the county control is 911, right? That's yeah. So the other two are exactly what they say. We are charged now. Unfortunately, the SPCA is going through some restructuring right now, and you are going to see a large increase in that number. And then Klug Animal Control is for our
After hours.
No, but our not dog catcher, our animal control officer that we have staffed can't work 24 hours a day, so we have another service that comes in at night, and that's Klug. I would absolutely look forward to you finding grant money to do this. I don't know how to put this. I was surprised to learn that the taxpayers of York are paying for any animal that is brought in by anybody that lives in the city. So if you are out doing stuff in other townships and taking animals to the SPCA, we're getting charged for it. And I was really surprised to find out we're getting charged for cats. Because we have a dog service, we don't have a cat service here in the city. But if people are taking cats in, the taxpayers are getting charged. And we are about to get charged a heck of a lot more. So we have to find a way, and I really appreciate what you're saying, because we have to, as a community, we have to find a way to become more responsible for the animals in this city, because the cost is about to go up astronomically. I'm glad the microphone is not over there. So I hope to use this. I hope to use this over the next year to encourage, and even maybe look for some ways to discourage the abandonment of pets, the abandonment of animals in our city, people dropping off animals in the city. There should be very high fines for those things, and I plan on bringing those ideas and that discussion to council, because we are about to be asked to, again, increase this $32,000 is going to look like nothing by the time they come back to us with the plan. They're doing a whole plan for the entire county. And frankly, I mean, even at 20, we're paying right now about 4 or 5%, I think, of the actual cost that the SPCA incurs, and they're going to increase that to about 20%, which is still a bargain for those services. But the fact is, we still can't afford it. You know, if 32,000 all of a sudden goes to 200,000, which is about what we're looking at, that's a big hit. That's a big hit to the budget. So, and we know it's on a per capita, before it was on per population basis. So we were paying for 44,000 people. Now they're looking at doing it per animal. When you look at per animal, we contribute way, way more than our population. Again, because of, I guess, all the factors within the city and people dropping animals off in the city. So we're going to have to find a way to curb this. It's going to be an issue for the coming year. So if you can find grants to help, basically what I'm saying is we are not going to even be able to afford the services that we are getting. So if you can find grants for TNR programs for trap, neuter, and release, that is the best system of trying to keep the amount of wild cats, of feral cats, as low as possible. We know that. It's scientifically proven. So we want that to happen, and we want people to participate, but we have to find a way to really cut this off.
I agree, and thank you. Now I'm actually a little more confused about what that $32,000 is that we're paying to York County SPCA. How are they calculating?
That's for the thousands. That's for the thousands.
How are they charging us? Like for what?
They're charging us a percentage. I believe, Scott, you were in these meetings. They're charging us a right now they're charging us on a per capita basis. So like they put aside a chunk, I think $320,000, and say this is how much we are going to charge all the participating municipalities. And because we are 10% of York County's population, we get $32,000, which is a good deal for us. Unfortunately, it is probably going to shift to what is a more practical way of doing it, a per animal cost, and that is going to affect us greatly. Yep. So yes, absolutely, any grants you can find for animal welfare would be wonderful. Any other questions for the police or animal welfare? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And we move on to fire. All right, chiefs. Don't see a lot to talk about in here, but so if you'll skip to the important parts.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to the budget team for helping us get this budget set up. And to the mayor and council, we've worked very hard keeping our budget in line for this year, and we're again going to continue for next year. The majority of our increases are very nominal. And we have definitely tried to keep within line of everything as far as holding the line with the major items again. So we anticipate 4 retirements for next year. We're still 1 position short for this year yet. I do believe our overtime is going to start reflecting the staffing model that we have been working on for the past several years. So we're pretty optimistic with that. So. With that, Chief Smith and I again are thankful for the members and the job that they've been providing the city and the service to the citizens. They do an outstanding job, and and again, we can't thank them enough for the job that they do, and we're extremely proud and pleased for everything that they do for our folks here. So, so with that, we can move on, Mayor. So. As I said, the majority of our increases are are pretty nominal. Clothing, we've gone up $1,500. That is with some of the anticipated increases that are beyond our control for the clothing. Travel, we had to realign some of that funding for the food and that with the food line item that we used to have, since we no longer have Red Cross coming out to provide refreshments for members on fire scenes. Working with the budget team, we've realigned those two items so that way we can provide members with refreshments when we're out for long durations on events. One of the things that we have planned with our new ladder truck is to put on a coffee maker and a refrigerator so that way we're thinking ahead for when that apparatus comes, that we will have those items on board for those events. So if we get down to the contributions, the length of service award program, that's the retirement program that's provided for the volunteers. That increased from $33,000 to $38,000. Again, that's their funding that the city pays. And again, that was a $5,000 increase through that company for that. So the next item would be down on the next page for radio communications. There we did make a reduction with the purchase of the new radio system through Wellspan, or the radios through Wellspan. We were able to reduce that down to $10,000. I'm expecting that we might even be able to reduce that some more yet once we start getting into next year. That again might also be able to be increased or decreased. So. And again, the meeting expenses was adjusted again for food with the travel for Chief Smith and I, again to compensate for the purchasing of refreshments on incidents. Down at books and subscriptions, the description was cut and pasted from the electrical. What that should say is the NFPA subscriptions to allow us to access fire codes is what should be in that description. So that was, I'm putting there correctly. And as we get down to vehicle fuels, obviously fuel went up. So we've put a $5,000 cushion on that just in case. We will have new driver training again for next year. So that way we're in line again with what the fuel costs are.
So are you suggesting that you're being charged more now than this time last year? Because I thought fuel prices were down now.
The fuel prices fluctuate. Diesel prices kind of stay the same. They're a lot more than regular gasoline that way.
Right, but so you're saying they have gone up contrary to regular fuel prices?
Yes, they go up and down, but with our driver training, we hit that pretty hard. So I just want to make sure we're in line.
Okay.
So that way we don't run under. So we have gotten close to that. Last year we were extremely close. I think we did have to transfer money over. So the machinery supplies, there's an increase there again. That is due to we have to purchase more SCBA parts. The cost of that has increased. So we've made that adjustment there. Again, it's $3,000 for that, and we feel that that's going to be able to help get us over the hump for that. The next line item, which is the bigger one, the other supplies and materials, that is where we have the replacement cost for replacing our hydraulic rescue tools. We are at the end of our life cycle for the hydraulic tools, and the one tool alone will cost 1/3 of this, so it actually made no sense to us to try and replace that and continue with the preventive maintenance every year. This was actually putting this 2 years ahead of schedule for what we were planning on doing as far as replacing the tools with battery operated. Unfortunately, it wasn't cost effective for us to replace the tool with another hydraulic tool. So that's why I'm asking for us to have these funds, so that way we can just replace the tools right now and keep moving forward. So, and then the last thing we have is in our capital software, the reporting software that we use, that increased again, which was beyond our control, to the $23,000. And again, that's was beyond our control. So that's required by the state. And this program that we use is also what is required from them. So that's it.
Well, it looks good. My only comment is that, yeah, I'm in favor of getting those tools rolled over into you're saying that the battery-powered technology is going to work for us, right?
Absolutely. The battery technology is evolved to a level that, yeah, we are very pleased in the fire service with where they're at with that. Cars, not so much, but the battery-operated tools, yeah, we're very happy with that.
Just remember that we're giving you this money early.
Mm-hmm.
It was money that was not supposed to come until later.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So as you are with the trucks and the engines, or the truck and the engines, yeah, just be aware that we're getting it all fixed now, and then these expenses should not show up again later.
Correct. And again,
not too soon anyhow.
Yeah, and the one thing Chief Smith and I are doing is, again, we're actively pursuing many grants. We've been successful with some extremely difficult ones. The one now that we have gotten from the state, they've only awarded 5 in the state. We were one of the 5 recipients, and that's allowing us now to modernize the furnace and the heating system at Station 5, or East End Station, which was beyond that service life there also. So I'm happy about that. Again, working with Dave Rudolph and his crew, I'd like to thank those guys for helping us Band-Aid a lot of the things over the years that we're able now to start getting fixed. As everybody knows, we're finishing the Station 1 project. Belanda did an outstanding job with that. Thank you for all your help with that. And again, with the private donations that we received, certainly helped make that possible. And again, that station's going to last us another 150 years. And that's one thing with the fire department, is that we continue and try and not only provide that service, but continue to make our buildings and things last as long as we can that way. So.
Great, thank you. Thank you for everything. Any questions or comments from the team here? Council members, questions or comments? Other elected officials, anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman?
Elizabeth Bupp. Council, how do we come up? You use a lot of water. There's a budgeted line item for $190,000 worth of water. Can you, we don't use that all at the fire station, so how do you calculate or come up with that type of number?
Make sure your mic's on, Jace.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 6 different facilities, and then the pub fire hydrants. The fire hydrants are most of that. So I took the last 12 months plus 5% increase that we may have for their budget for that.
Yeah, so we have 5 buildings, and then the other thing is the fire hydrants in York City are rented. So that's the cost. Yes, they're rented by the York Water Company. So there's a fee for that yearly.
So we pay the York Water Company to use their hydrants? That's what the rent is?
Yes,
that's how that works?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not for us, but if we have a large event, then yes, sometimes they do. So the Elm Street fire, for example, that would have been one that they could have metered. But what we did there was setting up the tanker system, because we overtaxed the hydrant system with that. But yeah, we did not receive a bill for any of that stuff.
Good evening again, Ryan Supler. I had a question about those tools. Do we have to get different kind of battery packs for them, or do we have to buy additional?
So the tools that we're actually using, that we're going to now, they're using Milwaukee batteries. So the batteries, we just go to Home Depot and purchase replacements. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then on page 123, at the top of it, I have a question about the cost associated with medical director contract. I was wondering, what is that?
So because we're a QRS, we have to have a medical director overseeing our EMS service. And that's what that cost is. We have to provide or pay for the medical director from York Hospital or WellSpan, and that's who oversees our program.
Okay, thank you. And then last one is, I brought this up before, and we in the last year, whenever we see like reports in like the news and stuff like that about house fires, it seems like 99% of the time those people didn't have a working smoke alarm. So I want to make sure that we have some kind of robust program to make sure folks have access to those.
Well, I'm not sure I've heard of a more robust program than we've put on this year. Although now that you mention it, I'm not sure if we translated it into Haitian Creole. We did do Spanish. We did Spanish outreach. We did videos all over social media. You know, we have the free smoke detectors. I think the majority of homes that have been experiencing fires that did not have smoke detectors were Latino residents.
Yeah.
And so we are trying.
Fatality fires. The fatality fires.
The fatality fires, yeah. So we are trying very, very hard to reach that community and make sure that they have everything they can to save themselves and their loved ones. But your point earlier is still taken, that with the new Haitian, with the influx of a new Haitian French Creole or Haitian Creole speaking population, that is another avenue that we need to go down.
Yeah, so, and that was the one thing too, Ryan, we've been doing is we are putting together pamphlets that for those folks because we know they don't speak a lot of English and what they should do. Right now we have our EMA, Mike Shannabrook, is working on putting together pamphlets with pictures and what to do for fires and EMS type events, or if they need the police. So we are working on something right now with that to reach out to those folks.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions or comments? All right, it's 8:31 on October 22nd, and I am going to call this hearing to recess. We will resume tomorrow at 6 p.m. with, we're going to do BA first, with Business Administration, Department of Economic and Community Development, and Public Works. Thank you all for joining us. See you tomorrow.